Once again, you're watching Morning at NTV, the 18th day of June 2026. As we pick up the mantle of discussions here in studio, my name is Priscilla Regina Naloga. In our Kickstarter, we're looking to the rights under siege and who is really holding the power. Human rights, power, and the security state. And we get to look at that from the backbone of our Constitution of the Republic of Uganda, 1995, that has made 30 years. And is very clear, Article 20 stating that fundamental rights and freedoms are inherent and not guaranteed by the state. Article 21 guarantees equality before and under the law and prohibits discrimination. Article 24 provides that no person shall be subjected to torture, cruel, inhumane, and degrading treatment or punishment. There is Article 29 that guarantees freedom of expression, freedom of media, freedom of assembly, association, and political participation. There's Article 44 that also talks about freedom from torture to non-derogable, meaning it can never be suspended, even though they are emergencies. Yet, despite all these protections within our very constitution, allegations of torture, enforced disappearances, unlawful detention, as well as restrictions on political activity and growing security involvement in civilian affairs continue to dominate public discourse. And according to Amnesty International, Ugandan security agencies were accused of arbitrary arrests, torture, incommunicado detention, and enforced disappearances involving actual and perceived government opponents. Organization documenting at least 16 election-related killings and numerous cases of unlawful detention and torture from the recently concluded elections of 2026. You do have the Uganda Human Rights Commission that has also continued to award compensation to victims of torture and unlawful detention. In a tribunal back in 2024 alone, you do have a session having 15 victims that were awarded 70 million Ugandan shillings in compensation, while you do have data from the very same organization showing 150 torture complaints registered in 2023 alone, followed by 136 in other subsequent years. And so this morning, we are asking ourselves a question: is Uganda becoming a security state? A constitutional protections being upheld equally, and this is for all citizens? And when human rights collide with political power, who is really holding the power? Is it the citizens who they say the power belongs to, or is it the constitution that is supposed to offer protections and safeguards with that power and to that power, or is it the state itself? And anyway, who is the state? Joining me for these discussions, I do have Dr. Livingstone Sewanyana, who is the Executive Director, Foundation for Human Rights Initiative, and one of Uganda's leading voices when it comes to human rights, accountability, and constitutional governance. Dr. Livingstone Sewanyana, you most welcome. Good morning to you.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, our viewers on NTV, and good morning, Priscilla and my co-panelist.
Your co-panelist is Robert Weberle, who's an NRM mobilizer and a political commentator. You're most welcome, Rob.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Priscilla.
Okay.
And all our listeners out there.
So as we unpack this discussion, gentlemen, I think we have something that can help break the ice in the room, a question that I believe we need to ponder on, and your schools of thought on that will really guide our conversation this morning. The greatest threat to Uganda's democracy today is what?
Sorry?
The greatest threat to Uganda's democracy today is what? Let me start with you, Dr. Sewanyana.
Yeah, speaking about threats, I think the greatest threat to Uganda's democracy is the growing culture of impunity. Impunity manifests itself in many forms. You just showed me in today's Monitor an article where teachers beat a student, a pupil, to death. That's a very clear indication of impunity, because impunity amounts to, holding the power in your hands without paying due respect, not only to the rights of others, but also to their dignity. Mm-hmm. Impunity manifests itself in acts of corruption. When corruption becomes a part of daily life, when those who are charged with the responsibility of delivering services fail to deliver and instead utilize the money for their own benefit, that's already impunity. when officials of government or organs of the state fail to deliver on their mandate, that's impunity. Actually, you made reference to various articles, but maybe there are two also very important articles which we need to refer to. For example, Article 20 of the Constitution says all organs of the state shall uphold, respect, and promote human rights. But a more fundamental one is Article 221 of the Constitution, which says security agencies shall observe human rights in the execution of their duties. And here they spell them out, by the way, and they say all these agencies, including the prisons, the police, the intelligence agencies, the National Security Council, the UPDF, shall, and it is mandatory, uphold rights in the execution of their duties. Now, when they don't do that, that in itself is a manifestation of impunity. So impunity is taking very many forms, and certainly for me, it's a big threat. It's also a threat. One may look at it in the context of political rights, but also in terms of economic rights and social rights. When children are denied the opportunity to go to school, I have a case, a very interesting one, where a parent, a father, has completely refused to pay school fees for his daughter, having married another wife, and then just yesterday told the child that if you don't leave compound, see what will happen. You can imagine. You are the father. This child just came to school. But because she belongs to another wife who is not yours, the father does not see any reason why this child could continue to be under his and is threatening violence against the child. Now you can see there is that in itself shows you, how far we've gone, how far we have gone. So for me, I would say unity means largest threat to our democratic and human rights evolution.
Okay, all right. Mr. Webale, what would you say is standing as the greatest threat to our country's democracy today, and why?
Thank you, Madam Priscilla. And all peaceful Ugandans outside there wanting to add. Whatever has happened, at times people take advantage of the peace and stability of the country. The Constitution of the Republic of Uganda, Chapter 4 of the Constitution is clear. Every Ugandan, the guarantees all Ugandans their rights, right to live, freedoms, and all those. But where there is a plenty, at times people take advantage. But Ugandans have the right to elect their leaders. Ugandans have a right to have an inclusion of whatever they need to have. But like my senior comrade has said, there have been some few challenges in this country. Like people have been talking about security agencies. The security agencies, the army and the police have a right to arrest those that they suspect that are in I think that the intention of causing any peace or stability of the country. After arresting, after arresting, they will hand over those that have arrested suspected to the competent teams or CID or police or lawyers, magistrates, courts to investigate, and those that are proved innocent will always march home. It has been there in this country, and what we need to do is that to keep our country calm and leave those other agents, security teams, or those that are responsible to do their work. Of reason I lost my son, Sydney. I don't think people carry pangas to come and say, we must kill people. They must know. They have allowed the police, they have allowed the magistrates to conduct their processes, and whoever will be found guilty will be taken where it's supposed to be. But what has killed the country is that everything is politicized. I think it's not have us to, we need to have, Uganda belongs to all of us. And the concerns of Ugandans are fine. Like my brother is talking about the rights of children. children constitution is very clear. Parents,
in the case of Elias Lukwago, when you make a statement and say everything has been politicized in the reference of Elias Lukwago, what does that mean?
well, we saw a lot of things going away. I mean, all know about our former Lord Mayor. Of course, whatever suspected that our Lord Mayor was part, we should allow the respective institutions to conduct the investigations. And then, because we've been in this country, many people have been suspected of that.
After spending...
Our Lord Mayor is not the first. We have had people being suspected of treason, serious figures whom I'm not supposed to, I don't want to tell people to mention their names here. But we are confident that we trust our institutions. Once our Lord Mayor is innocent, I think we'll march home. Of course, the concern is that, I think one of the concerns that is...
So where has been the element of politicizing?
No. Whatever happens in this country, people take it politics. It's public information. They exaggerate. They exaggerate. But for me, what I'm confident, as a government...
The army politicized his detention?
The army has not...
Are you saying the police has politicized the situation?
The army does not politicize. The army, it has a mandate to arrest any suspect that seems to be tampering with the peace of the country. What's the role of the army?
Okay.
This work is to keep the sovereignty of the country.
All right. Dr. In the case of Elias Lukwago, and as in reference to the other cases that we have seen, the nature of business abductions, the Constitution vast realities and the articles that you were making reference to on 20 and 221 of the Constitution, what are some of the distortions and the violations that arose out of the scene that we are discussing this morning?
Talking about arrests, there are lawful procedures that one has to follow for an arrest to take place. And there are also presumptions we need to take into account. One, we have a presumption of innocence, that even when you are accused of committing a crime, you are presumed to be innocent. So actually, you are not a criminal. People are treated as criminals. You are a suspect. And that's very important, which means then you are entitled to what we call procedural guarantees. So what are these guarantees? Among the guarantees is that you will be informed of the offense that you have committed in a language that you understand. That in terms of an arrest, you will be summoned by a lawful authority. Remember that under our law, anyone can actually arrest. That one is not disputed. But you will be summoned by a lawful authority. And in that regard, in a case like Elias Lukwago, you could be summoned or served with a warrant of arrest. And actually, it's a requirement that even your else would be informed that a member of your village is being arrested for this very purpose. And if you are summoned or served with this warrant, you will then be taken to a gazetted detention facility. In this case, the police. You remember that the police is entrusted under Article 212 of the Constitution to maintain law and order, which means that once you reach the police, then you will be charged with the offense that you are suspected of having committed. Now, of course, the breaches we see here in the arrest of Elias Lukwago, one, the charge was not known. As you recall during the court hearing, this charge of misprision of treason was heard of by the lawyers for the first time. They were not aware of what he was being charged with. Number two, the way he was arrested did not meet these procedures as it has been described, meaning that in itself the arrest was unlawful, was arbitrary, and inconsistent with the known lawful procedures, as it has been explained, not only by the family, but what happened. And then, of course, where he was detained is not a known detention facility. You know, when it comes to detention, any place where a person, an accused person, has to be detained, has to be gazetted under the law. So as far as we know, we don't know which police station he was, where he was actually held. We don't know, other than being told it was a basement. A basement is not a gazetted place of detention, which again is a breach of the procedures. So, and then the treatment he was subjected to, again, that is unacceptable because it is inconsistent with Article 24 of the Constitution, Article 44, which is said are non-derogable, that under no circumstance. By the way, when we talk about torture, we don't only talk about torture in terms of physical torture. Torture can also be psychological. The process itself can lead you to psychological abuse. So the treatment itself also is in breach of Article 24 and 44, which means that in carrying out their duties as spelled out under Article 221, there were breaches, and those breaches are fundamental, and we believe during the court hearing they will be brought up under the Human Rights Enforcement Act 219. So those are some of the breaches which do not in any way augur well with, you know, what we call rule of law.
Okay, Mr. Webali, this, as you know, the procedures have been relayed to you. We're looking at the Constitution versus the realities here. Human rights are inherent. They're not a gift from the state. They are all of us are meant to be observing those human rights, regardless of who we are and what power we wield. How wide is the gap between the realities that we are seeing unfolding this week and the constitutional promises?
Well, I will not go deep on what some of the submissions of my senior counsel, but what I know, as a country, everybody is provided with the constitutional right. Chapter 4 of the Constitution is very clear. Every Ugandan, they have what you call inherent rights. Right to life. They must be taken to consider place. I agree with him. Once somebody is arrested, must be informed. You must inform the close family members or LOC or those that opinion leaders at all. Look here, whoever is ABCD. But at times it's circumstantial. At times the case they have alleged on you. Case of subversion, at times they're tricky, given our history of the country. But some of the people, it can be, you know, there's a lot of media talk. You find a lot of posting on media. Some of them you can't verify whether they are authorized. But I think we have gazetted places where these aspects are taken. Yesterday I was privileged. I saw a former mayor appearing in the court with his lawyer. The family accessed him. We believe that the allegation is of the case. Let's allow the team to investigate, and the truth will come out.
Okay, before, as the team does its investigation, I mean, this week is on Elias Lukwago, but we have seen this nature of abductions, people being disappeared in drones the way it was, you know, security operatives that are from the forces, the UPDF in reference, coming with men in ununiformed attire and taking people away. And to this day, some of these people are not accounted for. So when you make a statement and say history of our country, can you unpack that for us? Because to some people, they believe as if we're going back to the history you could be referring to. So can you clarify on your reference to the history of our country in line with these events?
when we look at our government, our core principles, we look at our national chairman, is peace and stability. It's the biggest achievement that the Indian government has achieved. Now, like I said earlier, the army has the mandate, even if you share with my senior counsel here, to arrest anybody suspect to cause instability of this country. If the suspect that whoever is dealing with foreigners or anybody can't overthrow the government, I think they meant to inform LC one chairperson. That's a serious capital offense. It's treasonable. You don't expect that whoever is dealing with the foreigners, whoever has guns, this team is dealing with to overthrow the government, then they come to inform my mother, my LC one chairperson. It may not, because they are trying to save the 46 million people. But the good thing is that once these people are picked, you see Ugandans have failed to look at abduction and arrest. If the suspect whoever has a gun is dealing with the foreigners to overthrow the government, of course, I agree.
Not all the abductions you're referring to have had guns.
Sorry?
Not all the abductions, as you're making reference to, have been around guns.
No, it's the connection, it's the alliance. If they suspect you...
And not all of them have been in that, aligning
I'm
with that.
saying suspicion. Once the security suspect that you and me, Priscilla, my sister, and me, Robert Weberly, we have connections of some teams to civilize the country, the security will jump on you, will arrest you, and hand over to the teams to investigate and prove, is it true?
So now, in the case of Elias Lukwago, do you believe there was any breach of what protections exist and safeguards in our constitution?
Well, with the case of my former lawyer of Kampala, Lord Mayor, it came through social media. I didn't pick a lot of interest until yesterday when I saw my pen court. But if they suspect you, I insist, like this case, which has been in the court, is now suspect. Is
this to say that you were not following what was being posted on X by the CDF?
I cannot trust the X. I don't know whether his handler, I don't trust the X because I don't know his handler. But the issue is one. Once they suspect you, that you are going to tamper with the security of this country, they will pick you in any very vehicle. But to hand over, are those people in court? What's important? Are they present in court? Yes. Okay. Are they dealt with the gazetted insurance of this country? Yes. Because, like if they are saying that the constitution is very clear that if whoever has information or pressure over the government, we inform the rightful institutions that, look here, our peace and security or the country is at risk. But we are confident that the mayor will have justice.
Is there a better way of dealing with the scenarios that you are putting emphasis on?
Sorry?
Is there a better way that our institutions can handle the scenarios that you're making?
There have always been a better way. We have a very strong human rights commission here. In case they go wrong, the human rights commission is a full-fledged statutory body of this country. You have seen, when you started talking about, when you came here first, you mentioned how some of them have been compensated. The agents are here working fully. We have a commander-in-chief. Of the head of state, the country's people are in charge. So there's no cause of alarm.
Okay. Dr. Sewanyana, human rights organizations like yours have continued to document allegations of torture, disappearances, and the unlawful detention that we have seen over the course of the year. And making to the reference statement of history of our country, how wide is the gap between Uganda's constitutional promises and the lived realities of many citizens?
Speaking about reality and what is documented, a starting point would be that Uganda has a very progressive legal and regulatory framework, and that one is agreed upon by all manner of people. If you look at the Constitution, if you look at various legislations that have been enacted, and also the treaties that we are party to. Now, when it comes to implementation, that's where we have a real problem. There is a wide gap between, I sometimes call the rhetoric and the practice. The practice is there are often a lot of deviations from what is spelled out. By the way, interestingly, even our National Development Plan 4 speaks about rights and good governance. there's a pillar there, which means that at every level there is an agreement that rights do matter and the standards must be upheld. So when it comes to playing out, there is a very big gap. Security agencies, on many occasions, they don't adhere to the procedures provided by law. There are breaches that take place. And as such, we have this phenomena, and you recall in the past we had the phenomena of safe houses. And of course we fought that bitterly. There was a time when people were always being detained in ungazetted detention centers, and what happens there is well documented, the abuses that take place. So that is known. Now, one of the most recent one now, where we see now serious breaches, is the manner of arrest. I think it's becoming also a more pronounced challenge, because much as it is established under the law that anyone can arrest, it is important to note that it is the police that has been entrusted with that power under Article 212 in cooperation with the population. So the military, much as my brother says he has power to arrest, can only come in exceptional circumstances. For example, when there is a state of war, or the person being arrested poses a real danger to state stability. Now, I cannot see, for example, Elias Lukwago posing a real danger, because it's somebody you can actually, summon, and you would report to the police station. So the amount of force used actually was unjustifiable. So this growing phenomena of the military getting involved in arrests and dumping people in ungazetted detention center is a very serious breach, and actually of our legal and human rights framework. We should not encourage it under any circumstances. Under all circumstances, we should encourage the practice of the police being the leading authority in this area. So I've talked about the arrests, I've talked about detention. Now there is also the element of treatment, how people are treated when they are arrested. Again, I've talked about the physical and the psychological. To a large extent, people are subjected to physical and psychological torture. Of course, we're also interested in the phenomena of trial, because breaches also occur. The Constitution and other human rights standards do provide for fair trial, prompt and fair trial. Now, apparently, increasingly, there has been a battle over the question of case backlog as well as prison congestion. Now, when there are delays in trials, then the whole principle of speedy trial is not adhered to. So there is also a breach there that takes place. That's why increasingly we're encouraging, because we're also aware that the institution of the judiciary has also its own challenges. We are always encouraging that people be granted the right to bail, because bail is a right. By the way, my very institution, the Foundation for Human Rights Initiative, went to the Constitutional Court and challenged government on the question of bail. And the Constitutional Court ruled in our favor and reaffirmed that bail is a constitutional right and must always be respected. We have had also breaches there where, due to unclear circumstances, accused persons have been denied bail, and it actually took the Chief Justice of the Republic of Uganda, it took him effort to pronounce himself on the matter by issuing what we now call the bail guidelines. that once you have fulfilled certain conditions, you should be granted bail. So when it comes to reality and practice, we see a serious gap at virtually at every level.
Okay.
So this needs to be addressed by those concerned.
In your submission, Doctor, I see another abuse. Allow me to call it institutional abuse. When one institution knows it can't get away with the manner and nature in which they're conducting their business, knowing very well that there's another institution that you can run to, report to, and you are compensated. Let's talk about that layer of abuse, institutional abuse.
Institutional abuse takes place in many ways. One,
that the army will go ahead and do what it does, knowing very much that if you're tortured, you can run to the Human Rights Commission and your case is heard and eventually compensated if need be.
Yeah, but you know that even if you run to the Human Rights Commission, how long will it take for the commission to, to hear your case and make its position known? But even when it does, what are the chances that even the award that it will give you will ever be paid? We have also had those cases where awards are given and they are not paid. So when it comes to institutional weaknesses and abuse, that also is a serious challenge. Because when you look at the Constitution, it has given mandates to various bodies to do this, do that, do that, do that. But increasingly, we also see failures in that regard, sometimes attributed to capacity, sometimes attributed to deliberate denial, sometimes misinterpretation of the law, and other times it is also some sort of impunity of some form. So institutional weaknesses also contribute to the failure to adhere to these standards and of course norms that we have agreed upon. Okay. And that needs to be recognized and addressed deliberately.
All right. Mr. Webale, there are many institutions that are part of this conversation that we're talking about. There's the security agencies. You do have the legal fraternity that is on one end. You do have the three arms of government also. They are on a pedestal right now. What the executive says or not says, what the parliament does or not do, how the judiciary is also, picking on what has been given to them. So public trust in institutions seems to be declining from where people are seated and seeing things from. Is that the same sentiment you share?
Well, I may not share because in Uganda, you are aware that the three arms of government are independent. Why? Unless the other one goes beyond what the expectation is, one of them will check. But the judiciary, the executive, legislature are doing their work. But at times, like what we experienced a few months ago, once it goes overboard, the other one will come in and say, look here, this is not what the expectation of Ugandan is. On the issue, my senior counsel talked about the way they arrest people. Those institutions have, if the police officer or army officer have gone beyond what is expected, they have displayed measures. Even in the video, if whoever is harassed, you have a right to go to court and sue a police officer. You are accountable as a person. If an armed officer or a police officer arrests an individual wrongly, you are accountable as a person. The law provides that. But of course, like what has happened, most of the people that arrest are public figures. When you are coming to arrest Mwezi in Kampala, it's not easy to get him out. I think there can be violence, there can be this. At times, that's why the security takes a lot of measures to ensure that the suspect is protected, people around are protected, and is taken to a gazetted place to find what is suspected, and then once it's free, not always much home. But of course, Uganda, like our senior knows, they have gone to constitution, they have gone elders. We insist that Uganda has come from very far. The issue is peace and stability as being guided by the President of the Republic of Uganda. It cannot be taken for granted. It's a deliberate intention to ensure that we can speak here, our voices, and Ugandans we can have contradictions, well, but the core issue that why are we taking Uganda? The army has its own disparate measures. Once you do contrary within the law, the law will catch up with you. The police will catch up with you.
Is the army the upholder of the law?
Sorry?
Is the army the upholder of the law?
No, that's not upholder of the law. What I'm saying, if it does contrary what is expected, it can be sued. And you can be disciplined. The army council can deal with you. The head of the state is not its judge. If the commander of so and so is doing this, the country is charged by the president.
So in that case, and still looking to institutional mandates,
yes,
if we're seeing an increased oversight of the mandate of law and order now being taken more by the military over the Uganda police, isn't that weakening the institutional mandate of the Uganda police? And again, referencing to some of the statements that stakeholders have been mentioning, how they've been running to different police stations to trace the whereabouts of Mr. Lukwago, and them being told, we cannot handle a case, we cannot register a case of a missing person, and statements like that to show that they are not willing to darten their hands on the case at hand.
I can't come because I didn't escort the lawyers of those people, but what I know, the Whistleblower Act gives everybody powers to, if there's a problem, whether an armed officer, whether a police officer can say, look, there's a problem here. But once a police officer, an armed officer, say, but whoever has a problem, people say, no, police has taken this, army has taken this. It's not the truth. The issue is that all of us, whether in uniform or non-uniform,
so what does this mean to the elements of the procedure guarantees and the due processes that are rightly documented in our constitution?
The
should be observed.
The systems are working. The procedure, all these are working. And
are they working for all?
They're working for all.
Have they worked for Mr. Lukwago?
Yeah, he's in court. He's going to have justice. We are praying that, we're being told, we look at him, I'm told he's not healthy, he's not fine. He's not fine. We hope that the magistrates will give you the bail, the treatment.
Okay.
But the process.
Dr. Sewanyana, let's talk about the militarization of our democracy, which is a picture that many people are, this is how they're translating the picture that they're seeing at hand. Constitutionally being governed by a civilian authority right now, when military actors increasingly are becoming part of political conversations, management of law and order, or taking over the mandates of other institutions, where should the constitutional line be drawn?
I think speaking about constitutional line, you just go back to the mandates, because each of these organs of state have mandates, and they are very well prescribed. Much as my brother keeps on saying, the military has to ensure stability and peace, I think we need also to understand what peace is all about. So when you start to talk about peace, it's not just absence of war. You need also to be mindful of the impact of arbitrariness. What does arbitrariness actually result into? Because that sometimes is not understood. Arbitrariness brings fear. Arbitrariness brings hatred. Arbitrariness can actually lead to conflict. So we need to be mindful. Why did they draw a clear distinction between what the police does and what the military does? To make sure that that possibility of arbitrariness does not occur. Yes, they are all security agencies. Yes, they are all interested in ensuring peace and stability. But each has its own role. That's why they define them. The prisons cannot be seen on the war front. You don't expect them. You don't expect the police to be at the war front. They are only meant to ensure law and order and cooperation of the population. The military is expected to be at the war front and also to ensure that our borders are safe. So when we start talking about the military taking over other roles meant for others, that's when the question of militarization now comes in. That now it becomes the premier player. But you see, even in terms of how they are trained, how they handle situations, they are not meant to handle civilians in an orderly way. The police, for example, has a human rights policy. It's very clear to every police officer how he or she is supposed to relate to the population. The military is not trained ordinarily to handle these situations. So what you are likely to see...
it's not upon them to even observe what we are calling as human rights to begin with.
The increasing involvement of the military in every aspect of society has the effect of, one, creating fear. It has the effect of demobilizing the population and creating a sense of despondence. And when that happens, you don't actually get the peace and stability my brother is talking about. You are now talking about hatred, you are talking about fear, and the result is conflict. And that's what we have seen in our history. All the transgressions we keep talking about, the abuses that took place, they were not perpetrated by police. They were perpetrated by the military, taking over the roles of the police. That's why we must be mindful of the danger that is posed by the militarization.
For a deeper understanding, could you extract for us an element that is referred to in history to really bring the picture home?
Come again?
Could you extract for us an element from history, from our history, in terms of militarization of democracy?
Yeah, I mean, when you go back to our history, we always talk about Idi Amin, we talk about Obote, and the abuses that took place. In our history, there's nowhere it is mentioned that the police arbitrarily picked somebody and dumped him in this place. In our history, it is very clear it was the military that was being misused. They were effecting arrests, they were detaining people, they were torturing people, because they are not trained to handle civilians the way these other institutions, call them civilian institutions, are trained. And as such, the chances of abuse become more pronounced. That is why when you talk about militarization, it brings fear. It brings fear because you are dealing with someone who is only meant to be at the war front. And now he's dealing with an individual who, in most cases, must be treated with courtesy.
And on that note, what are the speculated outcomes and impact should the environment only grow from where we are right now, and in reference again to history, that we must be mindful of, and what would be the recommendations of how to deter away from it?
For me, my simplest recommendation is that each institution, each organ of government must stick to its mandate. That's very important because that mandate is known. It is already documented. If they play their role according to their mandate, then we are not likely to see abuses taking place.
Okay.
But two, we must also bring to order those who engage in abuses. The challenge is when perpetrators of abuse are not punished, you create a culture of impunity because it is now taken for granted. It becomes a normal order that, like my brother said, so it becomes a normal order that if I'm accused of doing something, then the military will pounce on me, then I will be held away, and then, like my brother says, he will be happy to see me at the police station. Yeah, being at the police station does not mean that all is well. What I've gone through is equally important, is actually more important than what happens.
So on that note, Doctor, what was the Supreme Court trying to protect when it ruled that civilians should not be tried in military courts?
The whole idea was that the disciplines differ. civilian courts have very well prescribed procedures of handling civilians.
Okay.
Military courts also have very clear procedures of handling the military. So the whole idea was to separate the two so that you don't create unnecessary tension and abuse, because there is abuse. I mean, the way military officer pronounces himself against a soldier is very different from the way our courts handle civilians. You are taken through a civilized process.
Thank you, Doctor. Let me have Mr. Weberly give us a roundup of militarization of our democracy.
Well, but I don't agree that our democracy has been militarized. Otherwise, we wouldn't have the members of parliament or opposition in parliament. I told you here that I have been participating in election in Akawa. I've always been losing, but I'm a senior cadre at NRM. So I agree with the senior council that these institutions, most of them, they must do their work independently because they're trained differently in terms of implementing their professional work. But most importantly also that these institutions are strategic partners. When they find there's a challenge here, they will come to give a hand. Okay. And that's why, in most cases, you'll find the military walking around during the elections, but not intervening in anything. That's why in Kampala here, even where I'm sitting, the leadership of the whole camp electoral authorities for opposition. And therefore, the Ugandans shouldn't worry. We should be, all of us, responsible to protect what our elders have fought for.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Weberly Robert. Thank you so much, Dr. Sewanyana Livingstone, for your 2 cents on the matter. We close it with Stephen Bede, who's also having a sit-down on a similar matter regarding